Surviving a Narcissist. This is Wanda, and the purpose of this channel is to help you navigate narcissistic relationships, to go from just surviving to being a thriver and eventually an overcomer. I'm a narcissistic abuse survivor and certified life coach. And we're going to continue a series that I started on surviving Thanksgiving with a narcissistic family. And this is part two. So you've already survived Thanksgiving. Congratulations. And now we're going to talk about what to do after you survive. Because you want to go from just surviving to thriving and being an overcomer. And when you have any kind of contact with narcissistic family members or narcissistic in general, there is things that you need to be mind of prior to the contact. We talked about that in the previous video on establishing boundaries. But this is going to focus on detoxing after you have contact with your narcissistic family members. So when we say detox, a lot of people look at detox from a chemical point of view, like you're detoxing from drug and alcohol. But because narcissistic abuse affects you mind, body, and spirit, you have to go through a cleansing spiritually and emotionally. So I always start out with the what happened, who, how. So if it was some kind of event, which the event was Thanksgiving, but if it was something that happened during the event that triggered you, you want to say, write down what happened. Were you gaslight? Did somebody gaslight you? Um, did they verbally abuse you? Did they yell at you? A lot of times when you go back around your narcissistic family, you'll be in the role that you had before you physically left the family. For instance, I'm the black sheep of the family, and I'm always treated like the black sheep or the invisible child, the outsider, when I'm in any kind of family situations. Um, Also, if you were triggered, what happened when you were triggered? Or what caused the trigger? Okay, we know that what caused the trigger was being in proximity or around your narcissistic families. But was the trigger caused by you violating your boundary? We talked about staying for a short period of time. Was it a trigger because you had unrealistic expectations? You're in recovery for your narcissistic abuse healing. They're not. So did you expect them to act differently? Another thing you want to know to identify who actually did what happened. Because a lot of times the narcissist may have really been busy putting on the Thanksgiving dinner, setting the table, hosting, making sure everything was correct. So was it the flying monkeys? And the flying monkeys could be siblings, friends of the family. And so they may have been the ones that had did something that triggered you or abused you. Another thing that might have happened is if you are a sexual abuse, sexual trauma survivor, it's always a trigger for people just to assume that you're supposed to hug them. So if one of your boundaries were, I, I'm happy to see you, but I don't want to be hugged, how was that boundary received? Did people violate that boundary? Because if you haven't seen people in a long time or you only see them at Thanksgiving dinner, they just assume that it's okay for them to hug you. So you want to process it. You want to process it because the goal is if you decide to go low or limited contact, well, you need to identify how you can do that safely and to practice self care. Another thing that you want to look at is part of the purpose of detoxing. What happened is it might be a person that was at the Thanksgiving dinner or the event that you never met before. And even though you never met the person before, they kind of knew that you were the target or you were the black sheep or that you were in recovery. So therefore, you have to be mindful around that person also. Another part of the detoxing process is you have to accept the fact that you're on a healing journey and your family's not. So if there were things that happened that was a red flag or how you get a funny feeling in your stomach, don't ignore that. That's discernment and that is good. And that's there to keep you safe. So if that happened during the event, don't look at it as um, maybe an opportunity to either further engage with the family members. Narcissistic families function as cults. If you're the target or the black sheep, don't get fooled like we talked about by the love bombing, because there's some family members there that was love bombing. There's some families there that you could kind of pick up that they were being verbally aggressive, um, underhanded, snide remarks, throwing shade. And so you might kind of think that, well, it's okay to further engage with the family members that were more loving and kind and caring. But you have to always remember your boundaries are for you and your safety. You grew up in this family. You know how your family members are. And you have to trust that. And you have to stand in your truth. Because, like we said in the first video, first part of the series, you're low contact or limited contact for a reason. And the reason why you might be low or low or limited contact, like I said in my instance, I always was low or limited contact because I wanted to be in contact with the family members that were children. And so even though some of the children and younger people in the family, of course, they know that I'm a target, but I wanted to have as much of a relationship as possible because we're meant to be in a relationship. So my boundary is I go to the dinner, I ask questions, and I have a certain time to leave. So just like in my case, I wanted dessert. They had one of my favorite desserts, which was banana pudding. But they had to start eating the dessert. And because my time limit was an hour and some change, not too much over an hour, um, I I try to flow. So I'm not really like rigid, like, oh my God, I gotta leave. But it was more like we sat around, the football game was on, the food was good. It was time for me to leave. Um, and that's what I did. Another thing you might want to look at is there anything that you could have done differently? And this is a personal decision. Because some people might say, well, I would have just stayed and got dessert. But so is there anything that you could have done differently? And so I'm doing this for myself because, of course, we know the next major holiday is Christmas. And so I'm assessing how things went with my family. Is there anything that I could have done differently? Is there anything that I did well? And also remember to engage in a self-care activity. So whatever the self-care activity is, do it outside of your narcissistic family. So don't be tempted if somebody in your family said we have to get together and catch up and do things together. Um, consider it, but consider it along with your self care and with your healing. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Also, I would like to hear your comments. How did your Thanksgiving go? What happened? Who did it? And how did you respond? Also, please visit the website, which is www.visionofrecovery.com. In addition to a lot of other uh, resources and information, I offer a free 15-minute one-on-one to see if you would like to work with me. As I said, I'm a certified life coach, and my niche is trauma, addiction, and narcissistic abuse. And until next time, be blessed.